Iran that is rampant in its support of terrorism and interference in the affairs of other countries. He believes in containing Iran, so do we. When I look at our region today, I see a challenge that emanates from Iran. I'm sure you've heard previous speakers talk about this challenge. Iran remains the single most, the biggest state sponsor of terrorism in the world. Iran has as part of its constitution the principle of exporting the revolution. Iran does not believe in the principle of citizenship. It believes that the Shia, the dispossessed as Iran calls them, all belong to Iran and not to their countries of origin. And this is unacceptable for us in the kingdom, for our allies in the Gulf, and for any country in the world. The Iranians do not believe in the principle of good neighborliness or non-interference in the affairs of others, and this is manifested in their interference in Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Yemen, Pakistan, Afghanistan. The Iranians have disrespected international law by attacking embassies, assassinating diplomats, by planting terror cells in other countries, by harboring and sheltering terrorists. In 2001, when the US went to war against Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan, the board of directors of Al-Qaeda moved to Iran. Saad bin Laden, Osama bin Laden's son, Saif al-Adl, the chief of operations for Al-Qaeda, and almost a dozen other senior leaders went and lived in Iran.
For the success, the sectarianism and Iran's sectarian policy is unfortunately undermining the stability in many regional countries, in Bahrain, in Saudi Arabia, in other Gulf countries. And Iran is trying to make Syria and Iraq as two Shia states, which is also very dangerous. And we need to encourage Iran to stop this kind of ambitions for the stability and security.
And with regard to Ukraine, we must hold Russia accountable and demand that they honor the Minsk agreements, beginning by de-escalating the violence in eastern Ukraine. And know this, the United States will continue to hold Russia accountable, even as we search for new common ground, which, as you know, President Trump believes can be found. To the south, upheavals in Africa and the Middle East have sent violence rippling in every direction, reaching not only Europe, but also the United States. Today, the leading state sponsor of terrorism continues to destabilize the Middle East. And thanks to the end of nuclear-related sanctions under the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, Iran now has additional resources to devote to these efforts. Let me be clear again. Under President Trump, the United States will remain fully committed to ensuring that Iran never obtains a nuclear weapon capable of threatening our countries, our allies in the region, especially Israel. Throughout the Middle East, radical Islamic terrorists have found safe havens and secured vast resources that have allowed them to launch attacks here in Europe and inspire attacks in the United States. Driven by evil, they target their own communities, their fellow Muslims, indiscriminately killing or enslaving those who reject their apocalyptic mania. From Yemen to Libya, Nigeria to Syria, the rise of extremist groups ranging from ISIS and Al-Qaeda to Al-Shabaab and Boko Haram endanger millions, including many faith-based peoples whose roots in their homelands extend into the midst of history. ISIS is perhaps the greatest evil of them all. It showed a savagery unseen in the Middle East since the Middle Ages. As President Trump has made clear, the United States will fight tirelessly to crush these enemies, especially ISIS and its so-called caliphate, and consign them to the ash heap of history where they belong.
The latest and perhaps decisive phase to drive ISIS out of Mosul, Iraq's second largest city, began at the crack of dawn. Before Iraqi Prime Minister Haider al-Abadi announced the beginning of operations on Iraqi television, Iraqi and coalition aircraft and artillery pummeled ISIS targets in the western part of the city. And overnight, Iraqi airplanes dropped millions of leaflets on Mosul, calling on ISIS fighters to put down their weapons and surrender, and warning civilians to stay in their homes and cooperate with Iraqi forces. Since then, those forces have moved from the south and the southwest towards the center of the city, their first objective to take Mosul airport. Resistance is expected to be fierce. ISIS has dug a complicated network of tunnels in the city and is already using armed drones, and it's expected they will, as usual, use many suicide car bombers. Perhaps the most difficult or challenging part of this operation for government forces will be to minimize civilian casualties. There are as many as 650 to 800,000 civilians living in the western part of the city, and ISIS has never hesitated to use civilians as human shields. The humanitarian situation in the West is dire. Food, medicine, fuel, and drinking water, safe drinking water, are in seriously short supply, and humanitarian groups expect hundreds of thousands of civilians to flee the city as the fighting intensifies. Ben Wiedemann, CNN, Istanbul.
كل وحدة سيدها 35 عجبتها.
بارك الله بك شاكر، بارك الله بك، واللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد يا بطل، بارك الله بك وتحياتي لكم يا أبطال يا شجعان، بارك الله بكم على جهودكم ولدي. وبنفس الوقت شكر وتقديري لكل الجهود اللي تقدموها.
там наче бок є.
Ні, я тричі.
Диви, щоб нам тут... не знімали позиції. Давай.
Same real, it's not fake, we're not making you fake. No, we don't.
The Senate Intelligence Committee is asking members of the Trump administration to preserve all records that could be pertinent to their investigation of Russian meddling in the 2016 election. CNN has been told that about a dozen individuals, agencies, and organizations have been asked to preserve all records. Now, this comes on the heels of a closed-door briefing between members of the Senate Intelligence Committee and the FBI Director, James Comey. After that closed-door briefing, senators were very hush-hush, but obviously there was a lot of interesting and important information coming out of that briefing. In fact, Republican Senator Marco Rubio, after that briefing, tweeted that he was confident that the Senate Intelligence Committee would be conducting a bipartisan investigation of Russian meddling and influence in the 2016 election. Now, the White House Chief of Staff said that the administration would cooperate with the investigation, but that did not mean anything. He said he was confident that the investigation would take place and the committee would issue a report saying that nothing happened. Elise Labott, CNN, Washington.
제대로 방송을 하고 있는 알았습니다. 행진 중이라도 대통령 탄핵 찬스를 하는 데 선행하지 마십시오. 만약에 선행하면 배서 찢어버리십시오. 가만두지 않을 것이다.
Look at what's happening in Germany. You look at what's happening last night in Sweden. Sweden. Who would believe this? Sweden. They took in large numbers. They're having problems like they never thought possible.
The best theory for what he was talking about is a segment on Fox News from Friday night.
Perhaps no nation on earth is more committed to accepting foreign migrants and refugees than Sweden.
Do you see the violence really spreading across Sweden into the cities?
At least 1 or 2 times a week.
It's a very political film suggesting that refugees are bringing lots of violence and threats to Sweden. So perhaps President Trump saw that segment on Friday and was referring to that being last night because that would have been Friday night.
Seven new faces, all wanted for questioning in connection with the death of Kim Jong-nam. As police confirmed to me today, this is now a murder investigation. These 4 men are now suspects. They've been identified by police as being North Korean with civilian passports. Crucially, police say they all left the country on the day of the attack. The police wouldn't say where they flew to. And these 3 men are also wanted by police to, quote, assist in their investigation. None are suspects. 2 are yet to be identified. The third is a North Korean man. Their whereabouts unknown.
A Korean male approached an officer at the Malaysian Airport Berhad Customer Service Center, informing her that 2 unidentified women had swept or has wiped his face with a liquid and that he was feeling dizzy.
Under the keen eyes of the world's media, police gave details on the murder investigation in a packed press conference.
The cause of death is still unknown. We are waiting for the toxicology and pathological tests.
Malaysian police officials say they will stick to procedure and won't release the body without formal identification by a next of kin or a DNA test. Well, that's been met by the ire of the North Koreans. The North Korean ambassador to Malaysia condemning Malaysian authorities' handling of the case, saying they won't accept the results of the post-mortem examination. In the meantime, 4 suspects already under arrest remain in custody. One of them, an Indonesian woman, apparently thought she was taking part in a prank TV show and feels duped in taking part in the attack. That's according to the Indonesian National Police Chief. Another strange new twist to this already outlandish murder mystery.
ایران پشت برخی حوادث و بی‌ثباتی در منطقه بوده و به دنبال شیعه‌سازی سوریه و عراق است. از همینجا ایران را به تلاش برای ثبات و امنیت این منطقه فرا می‌خوانم. این سخنان مولود چاوشوغلو وزیر خارجه ترکیه در کنفرانس امنیتی مونیخ است. شاید برای بسیاری این موضع ترکیه در برابر ایران غیر منتظره باشد، اما واقعیت این است که همین چند روز پیش بود که آقای اردوغان در سفر دوره‌ای خود به 3 کشور بحرین، قطر و عربستان گفته بود امنیت این کشورها امنیت ماست. از این رو سخنان وزیر خارجه ترکیه در واقع بازتاب روشن‌تر سخنان هفته پیش اردوغان در سفر به کشورهای حاشیه خلیج فارس است که همسو با عربستان ایران را عامل ناامنی منطقه می‌داند. با چینش جدید مهره‌های بازی در منطقه گویا آرایش جدیدی هم در برابر ایران دیده می‌شود. این تغییر آن اندازه ملموس است که اخیراً ترکیه هم عادت کرده به سبک کشورهای عربی دست کم در ادبیات خبری و سیاسی خود خلیج فارس را تنها خلیج بنامد. از آن سو مایک پنس معاون پرزیدنت ترامپ در دیدار با مولود چاوشوغلو میگوید اجازه نخواهیم داد ایران به تهدیدی برای منطقه تبدیل شود. این سخنان اگرچه دلگرمی خوبی برای ترکیه است و نشان از نزدیکی دو متحد دیروز دارد، ولی حلال همه مشکلات ترکیه نیست. درست ترکیه در همین منطقه در شمال سوریه با امریکا اختلاف نظر اساسی دارد. ترکیه مخالف حضور کردهای پیاده در عملیات آزادسازی رقه است. اختلاف نظری که حالا در سخنان نخست وزیر یلدریم و در حاشیه همین کنفرانس امنیتی مونیخ هویدا است. یلدریم میگوید اگر امریکا چنین تصمیمی بگیرد روابطمان آسیب می‌بیند. روزنامه ملیت می‌نویسد یلدریم در دیدار با سران کشورها در کنفرانس امنیتی مونیخ بر عدم حضور پیاده در عملیات رقه تاکید کرد و آن را خط قرمز ترکیه خواند. اما باید گفت دست کم تا اینجای کار امریکا نشان داده که میل دارد یک طرف لشکر رهایی بخش رقه کردها ایستاده باشند. اردوغان برای تشویق مردم به شرکت در رفراندوم تغییر قانون اساسی این روزها به صورت دوره‌ای در شهرهای مختلف و در میتینگ‌های مختلف سعی دارد سیستم جدید سیاسی ترکیه را برای مردم توضیح دهد. خبر ترک به نقل از او می‌نویسد 16 آپریل روز تولدی دوباره برای ترکیه خواهد بود. از آن سو روزنامه جمهوریت می‌نویسد نتیجه یک نظرسنجی نشان می‌دهد کمپین نه به تغییر قانون اساسی که از سوی مخالفان راه اندازی شده در 58 استان همچنان دست بالا را دارد. اما جدای از این خبر روزنامه جمهوریت باید گفت هنوز تا روز برگزاری رفراندوم کمتر از 2 ماه زمان باقی مانده و شرایط می‌تواند خیلی تغییر کند. روزنامه سبا دیدار مسعود بارزانی با بینالی یلدریم نخست وزیر ترکیه را در حاشیه کنفرانس امنیتی مونیخ بازتاب داده و می‌نویسد تاکید یلدریم و بارزانی بر مبارزه مشترک با تروریسم. همزمان روزنامه یeni شفق از حمله جنگنده‌های ارتش ترکیه به مواضع PKK در شمال عراق خبر می‌دهد و می‌نویسد 8 عضو PKK در این عملیات کشته شدند. و در پایان این تصویر یکی از متهمانی است که گفته می شود در شب کودتای نافرجام ترکیه به همراه همدستانش قصد از پای درآوردن اردوغان را داشتند. محاکمه گروهی آنها از امروز در دادگاه آغاز شده.